Seo Yuna was 23 and already fluent in the language of exhaustion. She worked at a dry cleaning shop in Mapogu, a busy neighborhood in Seoul where office workers dropped their suits off on Monday mornings without making eye contact. She pressed their clothes with careful hands, wrapped them in clear plastic, and hung them in order. She did this 6 days a week. She took the subway to work. Line 5, always standing. She ate dosarak from home, rice, kimchi, a small piece of egg. She sent money to her mother in Jeonju every month, first thing, before rent, before anything else. That was the year Kang Junho first walked in. He drove a slate gray Genesis. His suits were Italian. He handed his clothes across the counter the way people hand things to vending machines, efficiently, without interest in what receives them. The collar was soft last time, he said, already checking his phone. I need it stiff. Can you manage that? Yuna said yes. She always said yes. She pressed the collar exactly right. He did not notice. He came back the next week and said the same thing. He came every Thursday. He never used her name even though she wore it on a small pin above her left pocket every single day. He called her, "Excuse me," the way you call a waitress. Politely enough. But not like a person calling another person. Yuna noticed. She always noticed. She just filed it away quietly, the way you file things you cannot yet afford to feel. One Thursday he brought a woman. She was polished and spoke loudly and laughed at her own jokes. She glanced at Yuna once, not unkindly, just the way you glance at wallpaper. Is she the one who does your suits? The woman asked Junho. Yes, he said. Then, without looking up, same as usual. Yuna smiled the smile she kept behind the counter for moments like this, clean, professional, costing nothing. But her hands were still. And her jaw was tight. And she waited for them to leave before she exhaled. That same year, Yuna enrolled in evening classes at a business school in Uedo. She had saved for 9 months. She studied after her shift, on the subway, in the 20 minutes she ate her dinner. She slept 5 hours on weekdays. She did not complain about this because she had made a decision, and decisions require a kind of silence that complaining destroys. She was not studying to prove anything to anyone. She was studying because she had stood behind that counter long enough to know exactly which side of it she refused to be on forever. She finished her certificate program in 2 years. She got a junior position at a mid-sized logistics company in Yeongdongpo. She wore the same 2 blazers every week. She arrived before her manager. She stayed after everyone else. She found a billing inconsistency that had been draining the company for nearly a year and presented a fix in a 1-page summary no one had asked for. Her manager read it. Then forwarded it upstairs with her name on it. By the following quarter, she had been promoted. She sent her mother enough money to fix the roof of the house in Jeonju. She paid her younger brother's university registration in one transfer, without the installments that used to carry embarrassment with them. She did not celebrate publicly. She just sat on her floor the night the transfer cleared and ate ramen and felt something settle inside her chest. Something she hadn't felt in years. Something like ground. 5 years after Mapogu, Yuna walked into a business networking evening at a hotel in Gangnam. She wore a deep navy wrap dress she had chosen carefully. Small gold earrings. Low heels that were clean and simple. She carried a business card holder. Her card read, Seo Yuna, Operations Manager. She entered the room the way she had learned to enter rooms, not loudly, not apologetically. Just present. Entirely present. She saw Junho before he saw her. He was near the far window, laughing with 2 other men in suits. He looked exactly the same, still well put together, still moving through rooms like they were built for him. But from where she stood, something about him looked ordinary now. Or maybe she had just stopped measuring herself against him long ago. He turned. Their eyes met across the room. She watched his face for the recognition, the slight pause, the searching look. He did not place her. Not yet. She held his gaze and smiled. Not the counter smile. The real one. He crossed the room. She had expected he would. Seo Yuna, he said, extending his hand. I feel like we've met. I can't place where. We have, she said. She shook his hand once. Firmly. You used to bring your suits to the shop I worked at in Mapo. Every Thursday. You never asked my name. The silence that followed was long and honest. She did not soften it. She just let it sit there between them, where it belonged. He called 3 days later. She did not know how he got her number and she found the boldness of it almost amusing. He apologized carefully, the way Koreans apologize when they mean it, with specific words and a specific weight. He said he had been thinking about what she said. He said he would like to have coffee if she was willing. She listened. She said she would think about it. She thought about it for 5 days. She said yes, not out of forgiveness, not yet, but out of something quieter. Curiosity. And maybe the faint desire to see what the next scene looked like. They met at a cafe in Insadong. He arrived first and stood when she walked in. She noticed that. He ordered for neither of them until she sat down. She noticed that too. He talked about his work, his plans, a deal he was closing. He was trying to impress her. She could feel the effort of it, and she found it both endearing and slightly exhausting. She sipped her barley tea and looked at him with the kind of calm that only comes from having needed nothing from someone for a very long time. You've changed, he said finally. No, she said simply. You just didn't look before. They dated for 8 months before she said she loved him. She needed to be sure she was choosing the person, not the apology, not the effort, not the strange guilt he was still quietly carrying. Just him. The Thursday night version of him who showed up at her apartment unannounced with a bag of snacks and sat on her floor and didn't try to be impressive. That version, slightly awkward, genuinely attentive, careful with her silences, that was the one she decided she could love. So she told him. On the floor. Over chips and canned coffee. Quietly. Like a decision, not a performance. One night, late, he asked her why she had never been cold to him. Why she had smiled across that room instead of turning away. He said he would have understood if she had walked the other direction. She was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, Seoul hummed its usual low hum, taxis, wind, the distant sound of someone else's life. Then she said, back then, every smile I gave you cost me something I didn't have. I was too tired. Too hungry. Too far from myself. She paused. But I'm not anymore. So when I saw you across that room, I smiled because I finally could. Because it didn't cost me anything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he held her hand the way people hold things they know they almost didn't deserve. And Yuna let him. For the first time in a long time, she let someone hold her without calculating what it would cost her in the morning. By the time winter arrived in Seoul, Yuna and Junho had settled into something that felt less like a romance and more like a rhythm. He texted her in the mornings, nothing elaborate, just small things. A photo of the Han River fog. A voice note of rain against his office window. She would reply hours later when she had a moment, and he had learned that her slow replies were not distance. They were just who she was. Careful. Intentional. Not willing to give more than she meant. She liked that he had stopped trying to impress her. That was the thing that made her trust him. When the performance ended and the person showed up instead. They walked Bukshin Hanok village on a Saturday when it was cold enough to see their breath. He bought her roasted chestnuts from a street vendor. She ate them with both hands cupped around the warmth. He watched her do this and something shifted in his chest that he didn't have a word for yet. You always eat like you're grateful, he said. She looked at him. I am, she said simply. I didn't always have enough. He didn't say anything after that. He just walked closer. He told her he loved her first. She had expected it, but it still landed somewhere unexpected, not in her chest but lower, somewhere closer to all the years she had told herself she didn't have time for this. He said it on a Tuesday evening outside a convenience store in her neighborhood, grocery bags in both hands, completely unromantic, completely real. She stood very still. Then she said, "I know." And then, after a pause that was only 3 seconds long but felt like a whole season, "I love you too." He laughed. It was the most relieved sound she had ever heard from a person. Her name was Choi Seo-jin. Junho had dated her for 2 years before they ended. She had left for a position in Singapore and told him long distance was not something she was willing to do. He had accepted it quietly and moved on, or believed he had. Seo-jin came back to Seoul in February. She came back polished, a senior role at an international firm, a Gangnam apartment, a wardrobe that announced her before she spoke. She came back the way people come back when they have calculated the return. She called Junho the same week she landed. Junho told Yuna about the call the same evening. He was matter-of-fact about it. Seo-jin was back, she had called, he hadn't called back yet, and he was telling Yuna because he didn't want there to be a version of events she heard from somewhere else. Yuna listened. She nodded. She asked one question, "Do you want to call her back?" "No," he said, without hesitation. She believed him. She also quietly noted, in the part of herself that never fully stopped watching, that this was the beginning of something. It always was, with women like Seo-jin. The call was never just a call. Seo-jin began appearing. First at a work dinner Junho attended, coincidence, she said, and smiled like she had invented the word. Then at a gallery opening a mutual friend hosted. Then, most deliberately, at a lunch Junho had mentioned offhandedly to someone who had mentioned it back to her. She was always dressed impeccably. She always touched Junho's arm when she laughed. She always found a reason to stand between whatever room he was in and whatever exit led back to Yuna. The setup came on a Thursday. Yuna noticed, with quiet irony, that it was always a Thursday with this man's life. Seo-jin had arranged for a photo to be taken at a rooftop bar in Itaewon, her leaning into Junho, his hand at the small of her back from a moment where she had stepped too close and he had steadied her without thinking. The photo was cropped precisely. Sent to a group chat that included 3 people who all knew Yuna. Yuna saw it at 9:47 p.m. She put her phone face down on the table. She sat very still for a long time. She did not call Junho that night. She did not text. She had learned, from all the years before this, that decisions made in the dark at 10 p.m. rarely said what you actually meant. She slept badly. She got up at 6 a.m. and went for a walk along the Han River the way she always did when she needed to think without noise. The river was gray and flat in the early morning. She walked until she knew what she wanted to say and how she wanted to say it. That took 40 minutes. She met Junho at a cafe near his office. She showed him the photo without preamble. She watched his face go through 3 expressions in 4 seconds, confusion, then recognition, then a particular kind of quiet fury that she had not seen on him before. "That's not what that is," he said. "I know what it looks like," she said. "Tell me what it is." He told her everything. The rooftop, Seojin's invitation, the moment the photo was taken, that he had not known anyone was photographing. He was careful with every detail. She listened to all of it and looked at his face the entire time, not for guilt, but for the small signals she had trained herself to read in people. She found none. Seojin's second move was more direct. She called Yuna. She had gotten the number from somewhere. Yuna did not waste time asking how. Seo-jin spoke warmly, the way dangerous women sometimes do. She said she thought it was only fair that Yuna know the full history between her and Junho. She said some things were still unresolved. She said she wanted to be honest, woman to woman. Yuna let her finish. Then she said, very calmly, "Thank you for calling. I'll take it from here." She hung up. She did not call back. She did not panic. She had not survived steam irons and night classes and borrowed blazers to be unraveled by a phone call. Seo Yuna made her final move at a company dinner Junho could not avoid, a senior client event where she had been invited by a board member she had cultivated carefully for exactly this kind of occasion. She arrived in a red dress. She was seated 2 chairs from Junho. She was brilliant and warm and funny all evening, and she made sure Junho saw every version of what she had become. Junho watched her. He acknowledged her. He was polite, because he was always polite. And then, at 9:15 p.m., he excused himself, stepped outside, and called Yuna. "I need you to know something," he said when she picked up. "Okay," she said. "I'm at this dinner and she's here and she's doing what she does, and none of it is working. Not because I'm trying to resist it. Because it genuinely isn't working." He paused. "You're the reason it isn't working. I just needed you to know that tonight." Yuna sat with that for a moment. Outside her window, Seoul went on being Seoul, loud and bright and indifferent to anyone's private life. "Go back inside," she said finally. "Finish your dinner." "Okay," he said. "But I meant it." "I know you did," she said. And she did. Junho ended things with Seo Yuna the next morning. There was nothing to formally end, she had never been offered anything to begin with, but he called her and said clearly that he was not available, in any sense of the word, and that he would appreciate no further contact with people in his personal life. Seo Yuna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "She must be something." "She is," Junho said. "And he meant it the way you mean things that have stopped being opinions and become facts." He came to her apartment that evening with no announcement, the way he always did when something mattered. She opened the door and looked at him, his face tired from a long day of being decent, and she stepped aside to let him in. They sat on the floor. She made barley tea. He told her what he had said to Seo Yuna, word for word, because she deserved the exact version and not the summarized one. She listened. She nodded. Then she said, "You know what I kept thinking about this whole week?" "What?" "That girl who used to take the Line 5 subway and eat cold rice at that counter." She looked at him. She would not believe any of this. Junho looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "Tell her she was always worth believing in." Yuna didn't cry. She was not a woman who cried easily. But something in her face opened, quietly, the way doors open when someone finally has the right key, and she leaned into him and let herself be exactly where she was. No calculations. No cost. Just here.